Effort without tension is a principle that most people misunderstand because they confuse effort with strain. From a young age, we are taught that if something matters, it must feel difficult, heavy, and exhausting. We learn to associate progress with pressure and achievement with struggle. Over time, this belief shapes how we approach work, relationships, learning, and even our own inner life. We push when we feel behind. We pull when we feel afraid of losing something. And slowly, without realizing it, tension becomes our default state. But tension is not a requirement for effectiveness. In fact, tension often blocks effectiveness. When the mind is tense, perception narrows. You stop seeing what is actually happening and begin reacting only to what you fear or desire. Your actions may look energetic, but they lack precision. You move a lot, yet advance very little. True effort feels different. It is quiet, focused, and deliberate. It does not rush, and it does not hesitate. It simply applies the right amount of energy at the right time in the right direction. Consider the body. When you try to lift something heavy while your muscles are tight and uncoordinated, you waste strength and risk injury. When the body is aligned and relaxed, the same task requires far less energy. The effort is still there, but the tension is gone. The same law applies to the mind. When your thoughts are rigid, your effort becomes clumsy. When your thoughts are clear, effort becomes efficient. Inner resistance is the main source of unnecessary tension. Resistance appears when you mentally argue with reality. You tell yourself that things should be different, easier, faster, or more comfortable. This inner conflict consumes energy before you even act. By the time you start working, you are already tired, not from effort, but from resistance. Aligned action begins with acceptance, not resignation, but clear recognition of what is present. When you stop fighting the moment, your energy becomes available for meaningful action. Effort without tension requires direction. Without direction, relaxation turns into laziness. Without relaxation, effort turns into force. The balance lies in intention. When intention is clear, you do not need to push yourself aggressively. You know what to do, and you do it. There is no inner debate, no emotional drama, no self-punishment. You act, adjust, and continue. Many people believe that urgency creates results. In reality, urgency often creates mistakes. When you rush, you skip steps. When you pull too hard toward an outcome, you lose sensitivity to the process. You may reach the goal, but at a cost that could have been avoided. Aligned effort values sustainability. It asks not only, can I do this now, but also, can I do this consistently? Consistency is not built on tension. It is built on clarity and rhythm. Learning offers a clear example. A student who studies with fear of failure holds information tightly, trying to force it into memory. The mind becomes rigid, and understanding stays shallow. Another student studies with focus and calm repetition. There is effort, but no panic. Over time, comprehension deepens naturally. Both students apply effort, but only one does so without inner resistance. Effort without tension also changes how you deal with obstacles. When tension dominates, obstacles feel personal. You interpret difficulty as proof that something is wrong with you or the path you chose. This emotional reaction drains energy. When effort is aligned, obstacles are treated as feedback. They are information, not threats. You adjust your approach rather than attacking the problem with more force. This approach does not eliminate discipline, it refines it. Discipline without awareness becomes harsh and brittle. Discipline with awareness becomes stable and flexible. You show up, not because you are afraid of consequences, but because you understand the value of repetition. You work not to escape discomfort, but to develop capability. This kind of discipline lasts because it does not rely on emotional pressure. Effort without tension also requires patience with results. When you constantly measure yourself against outcomes, tension grows. You begin pulling the future into the present, demanding proof that your effort is worth it. But meaningful progress often moves beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Aligned effort trusts this process. It focuses on correct action rather than immediate reward. This does not mean you stop caring about results. It means results no longer control your emotional state. You evaluate them calmly, learn from them, and continue. This emotional neutrality protects your energy. Instead of burning out, you build endurance. Over time, this way of working transforms your relationship with effort itself. Work no longer feels like a battle against yourself. Action no longer feels like punishment. You experience effort as engagement rather than strain. Even challenging tasks become manageable because you are no longer carrying unnecessary tension into them. When pushing and pulling stop, something subtle happens. Your attention sharpens. You notice inefficiencies in your behavior. You sense when to act and when to wait. This sensitivity cannot exist in a tense mind. It emerges only when effort is free from inner conflict. True effectiveness is quiet. It does not announce itself through stress or urgency. It reveals itself through steady progress and reliable outcomes. When effort is aligned, you move forward without friction. You do not waste energy fighting yourself. You use your strength where it matters. In this state, effort becomes sustainable, learning becomes deeper, and action becomes purposeful. Not because you are doing less, but because you are doing what is necessary, without resistance, without force, and without tension. Awareness before action is a discipline that separates impulsive behavior from intelligent response. Most people believe they are acting consciously, yet much of what they do is automatic. A stimulus appears, an emotion arises, and action follows almost instantly. This speed creates the illusion of control, but in reality it is the absence of choice. When action happens without awareness, it is driven by habit, fear, desire, or past conditioning rather than understanding of the present situation. Impulse is not strength, it is unexamined energy. When you react immediately, you surrender authority to your emotions. The mind narrows, attention collapses, and perception becomes selective. You no longer see the full picture, you see only what confirms your emotional state. In such moments, even well-intentioned actions often lead to unnecessary conflict or regret. Awareness interrupts this chain. It creates a pause between stimulus and response. This pause may be brief, but it is powerful. Within it, you regain the ability to observe instead of react. Observation does not mean suppression of emotion. It means recognizing what is happening internally and externally without being pushed by it. When you can see your own reactions forming, they lose their automatic authority over you. Clear observation begins with the body. Before thoughts fully form, the body reacts. Tension appears in the shoulders. The breath becomes shallow. The jaw tightens. These signals arrive earlier than conscious thought. When you learn to notice them, you gain early awareness. Instead of being pulled into reaction, you stay present. This presence is the foundation of wise action. Without awareness, action is often misdirected. You respond to the emotion rather than the situation. You defend when there is no real attack. You rush when patience is required. You speak when silence would be more effective. These are not moral failures, they are failures of attention. Education of the mind begins by training awareness, not by forcing better behavior. When awareness comes first, action becomes precise. Precision does not mean slowness, it means accuracy. A precise response may be firm, gentle, fast, or restrained, but it is appropriate to the moment. This appropriateness is impossible without seeing clearly. In learning, this principle is essential. A student who reacts to confusion with frustration blocks understanding. The emotional reaction becomes louder than the lesson. A student who observes confusion without judgment stays engaged. Curiosity replaces resistance. The mind remains open and learning continues. The difference is not intelligence, but awareness. Awareness also protects energy. Impulsive reactions drain strength because they multiply problems. One reaction triggers another, and soon the original situation is buried under emotional consequences. When awareness guides action, energy is conserved. You deal with what is real, not with imagined threats or exaggerated interpretations. This discipline requires practice. The mind is conditioned to move quickly. It seeks certainty and control. Pausing feels uncomfortable at first because it removes familiar patterns. But discomfort is not danger. It is simply the mind adjusting to a new way of operating. Silence is an important teacher here. When you do not immediately fill space with action or words, information appears. You notice tone, timing, context, and intention. You begin to understand not only what is happening, but why it is happening. This deeper understanding allows responses that resolve situations instead of escalating them. Awareness before action also changes how you relate to mistakes. When you react impulsively and fail, self-criticism often follows. This creates more tension and reduces learning. When awareness guides action, mistakes are observed without emotional excess. They become data, not identity. You adjust and continue without carrying unnecessary weight. This approach builds inner stability. You are no longer at the mercy of external triggers. Circumstances may still challenge you, but they do not command you. You remain centered, capable of choosing your response. This choice is real freedom, not the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to act according to understanding rather than impulse. Over time, awareness reshapes character. Patience grows naturally, not through force, but through understanding. Confidence becomes quieter and more grounded. You trust your ability to respond wisely, so you no longer need to rush or prove yourself. Even under pressure, the mind stays organized. Awareness before action does not mean avoiding decisions. It means making them consciously. Decisive action that arises from awareness is more effective than rapid action driven by emotion. It reduces regret because it is aligned with reality rather than reaction. In daily life, this principle transforms relationships, work, and self-discipline. Conversations become clearer, conflicts de-escalate, work becomes more efficient. You stop wasting effort correcting problems created by haste. Progress becomes smoother, not because life is easier, but because you are no longer fighting it blindly. When you stop reacting impulsively, you reclaim the space where wisdom operates. In that space, observation informs action, and action serves purpose. This is not a technique for special moments, it is a way of living. With awareness first, every action becomes an opportunity to act with clarity, precision, and calm strength. Letting life unfold through discipline begins with correcting a common misunderstanding. Discipline is often seen as restriction, force, or a rigid system imposed on life in order to control outcomes. Many people resist discipline because they associate it with loss of freedom. In reality, the opposite is true. Discipline is not about controlling life, it is about mastering the self so that life no longer needs to be controlled. When inner chaos is reduced, external order begins to appear naturally. Life is complex, unpredictable, and constantly changing. Trying to control it directly creates tension and frustration. The more you attempt to force outcomes, the more resistance you encounter. Discipline offers a different approach. Instead of manipulating circumstances, it refines behavior, attention, and intention. By doing so, it creates conditions in which outcomes can develop without interference. Self-discipline begins with consistency. Consistency is not dramatic. It is quiet, repetitive, and often unnoticed. Most people abandon discipline because they expect immediate visible results. When results do not appear quickly, they try to intervene, adjust aggressively, or give up entirely. True discipline accepts delayed gratification. It trusts that correct actions, repeated over time, shape results beyond what impatience can produce. When discipline governs the self, emotional impulses lose their authority. You no longer act simply because you feel like it, nor do you avoid action because it feels uncomfortable. This emotional neutrality is essential. It creates stability. From stability, clarity emerges. From clarity, appropriate action becomes obvious. In this way, discipline does not restrict life. It clears the internal noise that blocks understanding. Natural outcomes require space. Space is created when the mind stops interfering unnecessarily. Many problems persist not because of lack of effort, but because of too much interference. Constantly adjusting, worrying, and forcing disrupts natural processes. Discipline teaches restraint. It teaches when to act and when to step back. This balance allows systems, whether personal growth, learning, or relationships, to organize themselves. Consider learning a skill. Without discipline, practice is sporadic and driven by mood. Progress is unstable. With discipline, practice becomes regular, even when motivation is low. Over time, competence grows. At a certain point, performance begins to flow effortlessly. This flow is not accidental. It is the result of disciplined structure that eventually allows natural expression. Discipline also protects energy. When behavior is disciplined, decision fatigue decreases. You do not constantly negotiate with yourself about what to do next. This mental simplicity frees attention for deeper engagement. Life feels less chaotic not because demands disappear, but because your response becomes organized. Letting life unfold does not mean passivity. It means participation without obsession. Discipline provides the framework within which flexibility becomes possible. When your foundation is stable, you can adapt without panic. When your habits are strong, you can respond to change without losing direction. Control over the self begins with observation. You cannot discipline what you do not understand. By observing patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior, you identify where energy is wasted. Discipline is then applied selectively, not harshly. It is precise, not oppressive. You adjust sleep, attention, movement, and focus, not to become rigid, but to become reliable. Reliability is powerful. When you trust yourself to act correctly regardless of mood, fear loses its influence. You no longer rush to secure outcomes. You do your part and allow results to form. This trust reduces anxiety and builds patience. Many people try to discipline life instead of themselves. They attempt to control other people's circumstances and timing. This creates conflict. When discipline is internal, external relationships improve. You listen better, you react less. You communicate more clearly. Without force, influence increases. Over time, discipline transforms identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles to stay on track. You become someone who moves steadily. This shift is subtle but profound. It changes how you approach challenges. Instead of asking, "How do I control this situation?" you ask, "How do I remain aligned within it?" Natural outcomes emerge when interference ends. Growth happens when conditions are right, not when it is demanded. Discipline creates those conditions quietly. It does not guarantee specific results, but it guarantees integrity of process. And a sound process maintained over time produces outcomes that force cannot. Letting life unfold through discipline requires humility. It accepts that you cannot command everything, but you can govern yourself. This governance is not harsh. It is respectful. You treat your time, energy, and attention as valuable resources. You invest them carefully. As discipline deepens, effort feels lighter. Actions become simpler. You are no longer chasing control. You are maintaining alignment. Life begins to respond not because you push it, but because you are no longer blocking it. In this way, discipline becomes freedom. Freedom from impulsive behavior, freedom from constant correction, freedom from anxiety about outcomes. With the self in order, life is allowed to unfold, naturally, steadily, and with far less struggle. Inner stillness is often misunderstood as withdrawal from life or lack of ambition. In truth, inner stillness is not the absence of activity, but the absence of unnecessary mental noise. When the mind is constantly pulled by fear, desire, comparison, and urgency, even simple situations feel chaotic. The chaos does not come from the world alone, it comes from the mind reacting to the world without stability. When inner movement settles, perception changes, and with it, the quality of action. A restless mind tries to manage everything at once. It jumps ahead, revisits the past, and imagines outcomes that have not yet occurred. This creates tension and fragmentation. Attention is scattered and energy is divided. In such a state, even well-planned actions fall apart because they lack coherence. Stillness restores coherence. It gathers attention into the present moment where clarity becomes possible. When the mind becomes steady, neutrality emerges. Neutrality does not mean indifference. It means freedom from emotional extremes that distort judgment. A neutral mind can observe success without arrogance and failure without collapse. This emotional balance protects consistency. Instead of being thrown off course by external events, you remain oriented toward what needs to be done. Outer order begins with how you perceive situations. When the mind is calm, problems appear smaller and more manageable. You see sequences rather than chaos, causes rather than confusion. This clarity allows you to prioritize correctly. Many people feel overwhelmed not because they have too much to do, but because they cannot see what truly matters. Inner stillness sharpens this perception. Progress that happens organically does not mean progress without effort. It means progress without struggle. Actions flow from understanding rather than from pressure. When the mind is quiet, you stop overcorrecting. You make adjustments based on feedback instead of fear. This reduces wasted effort and increases efficiency. Stillness also improves timing. A noisy mind acts too early or too late. It interferes when patience is required and hesitates when action is needed. A steady mind senses the right moment. This sensitivity cannot be forced. It arises from presence. When you are fully present, you notice subtle changes in conditions and respond appropriately. In relationships, inner stillness transforms interaction. When you are calm, you listen without preparing a response. You speak without emotional charge. Conflicts de-escalate because you are no longer feeding them with reaction. Outer harmony begins to form not because others change, but because your steadiness alters the dynamic. In work and learning, stillness deepens focus. Distractions lose their grip because the mind is no longer seeking stimulation. You engage fully with one task at a time. This depth produces higher quality results in less time. What once felt overwhelming becomes structured and achievable. Stillness does not eliminate pressure. It changes how pressure is experienced. External demands may remain, but they no longer dictate your internal state. You respond to requirements calmly, one step at a time. This prevents burnout and supports long-term progress. Cultivating inner stillness requires discipline and patience. The mind is conditioned to noise. At first, quiet feels uncomfortable. Thoughts become louder before they settle. This is not a setback, it is a sign that awareness is increasing. With continued practice, the mind learns to rest in simplicity. As stillness deepens, confidence grows naturally. You trust your ability to handle situations because you are no longer overwhelmed by them. This confidence is quiet and stable. It does not depend on external validation. It comes from knowing that you can remain steady regardless of circumstances. Outer order emerges gradually. Your actions become consistent. Your decisions become clearer. Your environment reflects your inner state. Tasks are completed. Relationships stabilize. Goals progress without constant force. This order is not imposed. It forms as a byproduct of inner alignment. Inner stillness also restores perspective. You see challenges as temporary and manageable. You understand that not every situation requires immediate response. This patience allows solutions to mature. Often, problems resolve themselves when they are no longer fueled by reactive energy. When the mind is steady and neutral, external chaos loses its power because it no longer controls your attention. You remain grounded while situations change around you. From this grounded state, progress happens organically, not through struggle, not through pressure, but through clarity, consistency, and calm engagement with life as it is.